How's it going, everybody? This is Jason Ostrowski, and welcome to another edition of the Everything Real Estate Podcast. In today's episode, we have a great conversation with Nicole Murphy from our Bluebell office, and Nicole has established herself as the expert when it comes to new construction, specifically small custom builds with small builders, whether that be a spec property or whether that be a custom dream home for your clients. We're going to break it down step by step of what that process is like and what that entails. And the reason why that's important right now is because with the lack of inventory that's out there, the lack of homes for your buyers to go and see, maybe they want to do some kind of new construction, custom build, they can build their dream house, but maybe we're a little intimidated by what that entails and how do we go about doing that. And we can use Nicole's expertise to help guide us through that process. So let's get right into that with Nicole this week, and we'll pick it up on the other side. I'm here with Nicole Murphy from the Bluebell office today, and I was in a class with Nicole a couple weeks back, and the reason why I wanted to have Nicole on and why I'm excited to have her here, if you're thinking about doing a custom build with a client right now and you don't know how the mechanics of that work, I think Nicole is the absolute perfect person to have on. It's right in her wheelhouse today. So Nicole, how are you first and foremost? How are you doing today?
Hi, Jason. I'm good. How are you?
Good. So as I started to say, you had a class in Bluebell a couple weeks back that I was privileged to be in. And I think you did such an awesome job of kind of dumbing down the explanation of how to go about doing a custom build with a client. And I'm always interested in what you have to say, because every time that you speak about doing a custom build, I learn something new. And so first question that I have is a very simple one for you, because I want to start at the very beginning of the process, and let's just go through it chronologically, right? So we're talking about doing a one-off custom build with a builder. We're not talking about a large builder like a Toll or, a Pulte or anything like that. We're talking about an individual lot, individual custom build with a small builder that you would hire to build a home. So the first thing that we're going to do is, obviously, if you're going to build a custom home, we have to find a lot. And so one thing that I wanted to ask right off the bat, the simplest of questions, what is the difference between buying a lot that is considered raw land and one that is considered improved land?
Okay. So, there's a pretty big difference in the sense that when a buyer is looking at a lot, there are costs that will be incurred prior to being able to build a house. And so depending on how established the lot is, that will determine what your costs will be moving forward. There's a due diligence period of time that I always make sure is included in any sort of a land purchase, because sometimes you might think that a lot is ready to be built on, but it might still need some things that you were unaware of, and there are costs associated with that. So you can come up to one lot and it might have utilities to the lot. It might have a lot of times, if there was a previous home on the lot, that's somewhat beneficial because it probably has some source of water and sewer and utilities. But then there are other instances in which, those items aren't available. So there's a lot to learn about what the zoning rules are in the township, what type of stormwater management is required for that specific lot, whether or not there are public utilities close by, depending how close they are will determine how expensive they will be, in addition to determining where the actual house would be located on the lot would determine how expensive for how far it is going to be away from the source. So there are lots of different variables.
Yeah, I think, one thing getting into it with a couple clients recently and doing the custom builds, you kind of feel, if you're not used to the process, it can feel very overwhelming and you get scared. You're like, oh my God, who am I going to turn to kind of learn this stuff? And that's why you and I have had multiple conversations over the years. And all right, let's assume that we're buying a raw piece of land. Okay.
Okay.
And you talk about the due diligence period involved in that. We're going to talk about the time frames a little bit more down the line here, but let's start just at the beginning. What is the first thing that I'm going to need to do in the due diligence process to move the process along here?
Okay. There are several factors. So, the first is financing is going to dictate a lot of what your due diligence requirements will be. So if you have a buyer who's paying cash, you don't have quite as much red tape to uncover as you would if you were using some sort of a bank. That being said, the first step is really to engage with an engineer. And then the engineer will do lots of different things, such as get you some drawings on where the building envelope would be. For those of you unfamiliar with a building envelope, that will show you the area within that lot that you're allowed to build a property. So if you're looking at a plan, it's usually a light dotted line that's in some sort of a shape, and it takes into consideration the front, side, and rear setbacks. And then within that building envelope, the owner can place their home in, whatever orientation they're looking for, as long as it falls within that dotted line area. And each township and each area has different rules and regulations as far as, is it 75 feet to the front and 50 feet to the sides? There are some little tricks here and there. If you want to get closer to the side, you can detach your garage or things like that you can do to play with where you'd like the house to be placed. So some other things that the engineer will do is they'll make sure that there's no wetlands or any areas in which you're not able to build. And if there are wetlands, and I've worked with properties that did have wetlands on the property, and there's just certain rules on what elevation you need to be at, how far away from it you need to be, all those sorts of things. And then there's also stormwater management is one of the more important things to learn about, because the townships will tell you, based on where the lot is located and what their rules and regulations are, what type of stormwater management system is required in that specific location. And basically, that's just how when you have, whatever the elevation of the water is, the water table underneath the property, as well as the rainwaters and things like that, how that's managed on the property to get it away from the home and into the, sewage system or the stormwater system that the county takes care of for you. Once you get that information, that will give the builder everything that they need in order to determine, what you can do from a building standpoint, and more importantly, what it will cost just to be able to get a shovel in the ground. So you're going to need potentially some lot clearing if there are trees or things of that nature. If there's already a home on the property, you may need to, schedule to have a demolition company to come out and remove it. And then you're really going to look to get a clearer picture once the engineer is there as to everything that needs to be done. And then you can price out what that is going to be so that you can get started on your build. It sounds like a lot of information, but if once you get an engineer who does this every day, you just kind of like let them run with it. They'll come back, they'll give you the drawings, and they'll say, this is what you can do, this is what you can't do. This is all the information that you need. And then your builder will take that information potentially and help to, get pricing on everything that needs to happen from that point forward.
Yeah. And it does sound daunting, but like you said, you have people there to help you. It's just about getting to those right people, right?
Sure. Yep.
The different stages of the process. If we just take it in stages, we're going to be perfectly fine. So if we have the engineering studies done, let's just talk about our due diligence periods now then. And okay. I think that's where some agents, me specifically, I'm like, how many days do I give for this to be done? Or how many days do I give for that to be done? That's one of the conversations you and I had. So let's talk about just kind of your typical standard due diligence periods for different things and kind of what to look for regarding those periods.
So, first, you've got the engineer, and usually that's only about a couple weeks because a lot of the work that they do is just kind of desktop work. And then they'll visit the site once or twice, but it's not very time consuming on their behalf. It's more research in the township and that whole sort of thing. So that's usually only about a couple weeks, depending on what their backlog looks like. Once you get to that, then it's really just a matter of, so all this work doesn't need to be accomplished in your due diligence period. It just needs to be defined. So once you understand what needs to be done and then you get it priced out, that's really all you need to accomplish at that point. However, then the other portion of due diligence would be from the financing standpoint is you really need to make sure that you get everything nailed down with the builder, because the bank will not go to closing on this specific loan until some banks will just require permits submitted and a contract from the builder. Some will require permits in hand. It depends who your lender is that you're working with. So basically, you're meeting with your builder and determining what your house is, pricing out your house, determining like the basic structural items and some upgrades and things like that that would be included in it. That needs to be done with your builder. Then you need to price everything out. The lender will then take all that information and give it to an appraiser, and the appraiser will take that information and tell you what is the estimated value once this project is complete. Once you get the ARV, that's what the bank will lend on is that after improved value.
We're going to get into the loan as well, because I think that's something, again, that is going to give people a little bit of pause, like, whoa, how does this work, right? So let's talk about a lender. And you already explained some of what you need in order to get shovels in the ground, right? Because the builder is going to work off of their allotment from the actual bank. And so when we come to the appraisal process is done kind of beforehand, and they have to make sure that all of your documentation and the finishes and all this stuff is going to add up to the value that it should be, or else potentially you are not going to get your loan, which we kind of came to a standstill in my deal because of COVID, and supply chain costs had skyrocketed, and the appraisal became a mess. We had to sort that all out, but that's a whole nother story altogether, and I'm not bitter about it one bit, as you can tell. We did get it done, by the way. But let's just talk about, from a financing standpoint, how it works as we go along with the process of the build with the builder, and kind of what they're looking for when it comes to actually having money to do the build itself through the construction loan. Okay.
So there's a couple things that you want to think about. First of all, it probably takes a good month to get an appraisal for a new construction loan done. So when we talk about timelines, I would definitely give yourself a month for that, just in case, because sometimes they'll have a lot of questions about finishes or things that are going to be going into the house. So just to kind of go back on timelines there. But as far as getting the loan to go through, in my experience, even if I've had a client that happened to be able to afford paying for the house, I think that using a bank in a building situation is a huge, huge benefit to your client, because they're kind of they're insulating you from potential issues from arising. And you can always blame them for the builder not having their things done or not getting paid if there's something that's not done, instead of it being on you, which is, well, the bank won't release the funds until this is done or until that is done. But basically the gist of it is, when you get a construction loan, there are two pieces to it. There is the draw period, and then it converts after the draw period. So some lenders will give 6 months, 7 months, 9 months, 12 months of a draw period, and during that period of time, it's interest only payments just on the outstanding balance. And and typically there's about 6 draws throughout the process. So the lender will need to approve the builder, number one, and make sure that they did their due diligence on the builder. Once the builder is approved to build the home from the lender, then they have these 6 draws. And so the lender and the builder will determine together what needs to be accomplished at each phase and when they get paid. So it's important that, regarding the builder, there's enough funds available. The builder has the wherewithal financially to be able to get from draw 1 to draw 2 to draw 3 and get all those things accomplished prior to getting the release of funds from the bank. But once the builder gets to, for example, stage number 2, they're ready for draw number 2. Every time that the bank sends a check to the builder, they send an inspector out to make sure that all the items that needed to be completed on that portion of the draw schedule have been completed to their satisfaction before they release those funds. So it's really a nice way to make sure that you're managing the money and the builder's not just taking all this money and didn't accomplish all the things. And then all of a sudden there's no money left and the house isn't done. It manages that process for you. And it's just a really nice way to be able to make sure that takes place.
Yeah. And it is a little bit different, right? But again, it makes sense if you're doing this build, how to best go along, making sure that things get done on time and on budget. Exactly. Obviously, you want the bank to kind of control that process and when things are going to be released to the builder. So what do you...
I'm sorry, Jason, I just say one other thing. Something that's really important too is sometimes if you don't complete your construction within that specified draw period, you can be penalized thousands of dollars a month for not converting, for not being complete. And so the way the construction loan works is once the draw period is over, it automatically converts to a 30-year mortgage at that point. There's only one closing. Lots of times if your client doesn't already own the lot, then the first draw would actually be to purchase the lot and give whatever the draw is that's agreed to the builder at that point. Those time periods can be negotiated in advance with the bank to make sure that you have sufficient time to get the build done prior to it converting into the construction loan. I mean, into the
30-year loan. Yeah. So you're going from the construction loan automatically conveys to a conventional loan.
Right. Right.
So let's talk about just real quick about the typical interest rates that you see, let's just say comparison wise to, a 30-year fixed loan. Usually those construction loan rates are a little higher. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen them be similar to a regular 30-year fix, and then I've seen them be a point or a point and a half higher. It's not usually a drastic difference, but they can tend to go up a point and a half from wherever the 30-year fixed rates are.
Yeah. And obviously, rates fluctuate and everything changes, but typically that's, kind of what we've seen at least the past few years. So one thing in particular that I think agents may get confused about, okay, we're starting the build, right? We get building permits. The build has started. And now we have to pick out, say, our flooring, or we have to pick out, say, our cabinetry. And there may be certain allotments that a builder may give a certain dollar amount for certain things in the house. Can you talk about that a little bit and how that kind of works with the builder?
So, well, it depends. There are different ways that can occur. Some builders will say, okay, here is, these are things that are determined when I always suggest determining all of these items prior to signing your contract with the builder, because for whatever reason, sometimes prices tend to be a lot more expensive when you change them after you're already under contract, as opposed to when the builder's trying to gain you as a client. But so as many things as you can nail down ahead of time, the better off I think you'll be in really knowing and understanding the cost that you're getting into prior to starting the build. But sometimes builders will say, and it depends on the builder and how big they are and how many resources they have. They'll say, okay, you have, $20,000 for all your cabinetry. You have, $30,000 for your flooring. You have $15,000 for your countertops, whatever it might be. And you can go back and forth and determine what those numbers will be with the builder. Then you go out and you shop these items, or the the builder gives you resources in which to find these items. And then that all is part of your contract with the builder. Now, if you go over, then you would potentially have to pay cash out of pocket for the extra. If you come under on some things, you can maybe move that money over to other things. So it can be different. I always suggest taking a look at what's included and really understanding what are you getting, especially in your kitchen, your bathrooms, and your flooring, because those are the items where you can really not get what you thought you were getting. So you really need to pay attention to those ahead of time. But I always suggest putting in extra allowances, because at the end of the day, if you don't use it all, then you can just, roll it back, at the end of the project, it just goes back in and you just don't mortgage that portion. But at least you have it in case you need it. And it's really beneficial to put that in the very beginning and have it included in your financing and have it in the appraisal as well, that you have these extra allowances to get, maybe higher end countertops or better flooring or things of that nature.
I think along those lines, one of the questions, you had referenced this earlier, and when you're out looking for, say, a piece of land and you're looking at the building envelope, and there are a bunch of trees, right? A lot of people like wooded lots. But is that something that you factor in ahead of time when you're, say, making an offer on a property? If there is a lot of tree work that needs to be done and cleared, and you know that it's going to cost a significant amount of money on top of everything else to get the building envelope cleared, do you consider that? Like when you're making an offer, does that go into your negotiation, let's say, with the builder?
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. I mean, because what's going to happen is the more build ready the property is, the more valuable it is, because it's less money you need to spend to get it there, and less time also that you have to spend to start building. But when I talked about doing the due diligence portion, as part of that due diligence portion, tree clearing should be a line item on your site improvements. For sure. And so at the end of the day, you should have, utilities and stormwater management and engineering fees and potential demolition fees and tree clearing fees. All that should be part of your site work costs that should go into the process. And so, any cost inclusive of the land, the site work, and the build and the upgrades and anything that you're going to do, that all gets added together when you're doing your appraisal and the portion of money that the bank should be lending on.
Yeah, I think our biggest fear is that we're going to guide our clients the wrong way with these things, right? I know. Right.
Sure.
I think that's the biggest fear, and people are afraid to kind of take that leap into these kind of considerations because we don't think about that in the resale market a lot of times, right? Mm-hmm. So along, what we just talked about, what do you think if you're out showing a client, plots of land to build on, or even what we call infilling, right? Where you find a house that's out there that maybe you're going to tear it down, build on that plot of land. It's already improved. It's easier. What are some common pitfalls that you look for when you're actually advising a client to do a build? What are some common things that, they may get bogged down with, or they may be out of left field that you're kind of watching their back for and making sure that they're making the right decision?
Well, there's a couple different things that I look at as it relates to raw land. For example, you'll see, it can take a long time for land to sell because this isn't for everybody. Every client's not going to be able to go through this process and love it and want to do it and think it's so fun and exciting to see this, piece of dirt turn into a beautiful home. But I think what you need to look at is, where is it located? What's around it? Is it even going to fit in? Is it going to be worth what you are going to want to spend for it? But like with raw land, a lot of land that I find that sits for a while is typically in a flood zone. I see that so much. And, you can just pop into Bright and take a look and see, is it in the 100-year, floodplain? That's kind of an easy thing, but that comes up a lot more than you would think. It doesn't always mean that it's not a piece of land that you could build on, because I actually have done one. It's just a matter of where that area is on the plan. And that's where the engineer comes into play to determine, how close could you be? There could be a stream in the back, there could be a pond, there, all those sorts of things. And as long as you're far enough away, but that's a big one. I mean, I think my biggest thing is value, is what is the value going to be? I mean, I've been fortunate so far that everyone that I have done has appraised for significantly higher than what we were into it all together. I'm sure the market's been helpful in that regard too. So that's one thing, but prices are increasing and things are changing. And I think making sure that it's the right location is a big deal. Understanding if the lot is so big that you want the house to be so far back, okay, so then you've got all this driveway and utilities and all that. Some people don't realize, they're like, oh, I want to be really far away from the road, I want privacy. That's great. But if you have 500 feet of utilities and stormwater and sewer and driveway, that's really, really expensive. So that's just something to let them know. Okay, we can do that, but just understand that's going to be a lot more expensive than putting it a little closer, maybe throwing some trees up along the front or a fence with some bushes or whatever else you can do. That's another thing. And another thing is sometimes people want to keep a lot of a lot of people would love a wooded lot and some mature trees and that sort of thing. But, it's really just a matter of understanding, where is the house going to be? What can you keep? What's safe to keep that's not putting the home in jeopardy, and kind of making that call. But I mean, typically when you have a lot like that, and the builder will show you, mark out where the house is going to be and what needs to come down. And then you can go around and put ribbons around, save this tree and save that tree. And they'll do that for you as well.
Well, it's kind of like an exciting process. Like when that part happens, I love to be there with my clients so we can kind of, just kind of get in the spirit of, this is what it's going to be. Like you said, like kind of making a pile of dirt into this beautiful property, right? And that's an exciting process to go through. And I think what you mentioned about like setting the house way back and the utilities that you're going to have to run, the driveway, stormwater management is always an issue, impervious spaces, all that kind of stuff. I think once you say it in our interview, it's like, oh yeah, that makes total sense. I think if we think these things through a lot, and we're just used to it, then it becomes second nature to us, the same way that, certain things with a resale become second nature to us as well. All right. So biggest part of this interview, and I think the most important thing that agents want to know, how do we get paid? Right? How do we do this with our commissions, and how does that work on a new construction build?
Okay. So, it's a tricky question because there are all different ways that we can get paid.
Yes,
and
how do we typically go about getting paid?
Okay. Right? With a lot, when you purchase the lot, that would just be like anything else. I mean, whenever you got a resale or whatever, whenever you purchase the land, it would be whatever the commission was offered in the MLS for that specific lot. When you go to close in the beginning of the build on the construction loan, you would get paid for that at that closing. Regarding getting paid on the build itself. So there are a couple different things. I've negotiated some different deals here and there with different builders on how I would be compensated. And some of that has worked out well because I've given them a lot of business too. So the initial one or two houses that maybe we did was that I had to wait until the very end to get paid, which can be a year to get that paid. But depending what builder you're working with, some of them will automatically build in your fee, and sometimes they won't. So if I've seen it where people, you help them buy the land, and then your client just go off and find a builder and build their house, and you're kind of out of the deal. I've kind of gotten into a position where my clients value the expertise that I bring to the table. They know that I have experience. They want my help in evaluating builders and in evaluating the process and helping them to determine, certain choices to make. I get pretty involved with a lot of my clients on what's going to give them the most return for their money, as far as, adding square footage or adding bathrooms or adding bedrooms, or what choices to make that will increase the value of their home overall. And they see the value of that in me and are willing to, pay an extra fee for that. But I mean, it could be all over the place. You could say, okay, well, if you can consult with me on this, we'll give you 1%. They could say, if builder can say, if you do this, we'll give you 2.5%. Sometimes you get 3%. It all depends how involved I think you're going to be and what you work out ahead of time with your client and with the builder. And you do that right at the very beginning, because you don't want to be left at the end where there's confusion. I did have when I first started doing this, I did have two situations that were a little bit challenging. It was just like an unexpected, oh, well, I just kind of thought that it was going to be this way, or I just thought that was going to happen, and it just didn't work out that way. So I learned that in the very, very beginning, before we get into this, when we're going through the process, I set that up. I talk to the builder. I talk to my clients. Everybody knows the situation. And, typically, it works out well if you can spearhead it that way.
Well, I think like everything else, it's all about setting the expectation, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And so you're setting that expectation. Okay, if we're going to do this together, I expect to get paid on the project.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and definitely have that conversation ahead of time. All right, so I want to know, last question to you, and you and I talked about this a little bit. How did this come to be? Right, you have found your niche. You're very good at this, and you've done multiple projects in new construction. For the agents out there that want to get into this and want to look into maybe forging relationships with some builders and doing new construction, how did you go about learning and getting into it and building these relationships with people?
So it kind of just happened in a sense. I love the process. I'm very passionate about watching the process. And I feel like sometimes I can walk somewhere and I'm driving down the street and I just see that house has to come down. This would look great there, or, whatever it might be. It's fun for me and I do really enjoy it. So I guess you kind of seek out things that you enjoy. But I had clients that just weren't finding what they wanted. They weren't happy with what was out there. And, as we talked about different options and started to, pursue it, I'm one of those people that wants to learn everything about everything. So if I'm going to get into it, I want to know every detail. And I go to all the meetings and I ask all these questions and find out all this information. I'm reading their contracts. I'm talking to the engineers. I'm talking to the builders. I get very, very involved. I talk to the banks. I talk to the appraisers. What are you looking for? What do you need? How do you appraise this? All that sort of thing. So it just kind of happened. And so I guess I had done it so many times at a point that I guess it was probably about a month or two ago. I was in a meeting with your mom, ironically, and we were talking and I was like, I have this thing and I just wasn't thinking about it. I feel like we're missing opportunities as agents. And I think that we need to, I think that people don't know where to start, what to do, how to get started. And I feel that there are so many opportunities to help our clients find houses, and there's no houses to be found right now. Although it's coming back a little bit, but you're never finding that perfect house. And even when inventory was okay, it's still really hard for anybody to find something that they're like, oh, this is perfect. It's exactly what I've always dreamed of. And so this is a way to help your clients find that perfect house that they've always dreamt of. And it's just a really neat process. So I've recently partnered with some other agents who had lots that they were trying to sell. One was trying to sell for well over a year, and I got involved with them about a month and a half ago, and they're both on one already closed, and the other one closes That one's got a little bit of a due diligence. I think that one closes in July. So we got them sold pretty quickly. I helped them put spec homes on the lots and all those sorts of things. So I have decided to partner with other agents and help them with either co-listing lots, or maybe I haven't helped anybody with actually taking their clients to find a lot to go through the process, but I'm open to it. So, it's fun. It's just something that I really enjoy. And I've been able to work with some people that I never worked with before and get involved in some other projects. And so far, in the short period of time that I've gotten into that section of it, it's been pretty successful.
Yeah, it's really cool, actually, because, you and I have known each other, for a while, and you really have become an expert in that space. And it's pretty exciting to see for you, and I can see you smile when you talk about what you talk about, because you really know your stuff. And I appreciate you coming on today. And to the agents listening out there, if you are thinking about doing a custom build and you do need someone to partner with or guide you through the process, I'm sure Nicole would be happy to help out. And point in her direction any questions that you may have that she can answer, because she has definitely been a tremendous source for me personally. I know she's helped other agents that I know, and she's done an absolute fantastic job. So, Nicole, just want to say thank you again. Thank you for joining me. I know it was late notice. I really, really appreciate you doing that. And I'm sure I'm going to be talking to you soon again, probably torturing you with more new construction questions. But
I love it. No problem.
Always do it with a smile on your face. So, I appreciate it. So thanks, Nicole.
All right. Thanks, Jason. Appreciate it.
All right. Talk to you soon.
All righty. Bye-bye.
That was the conversation with Nicole Murphy this week. She definitely knows her stuff when it comes to new construction and custom building. Here's a couple takeaways that I had from my conversation with Nicole. Number one, if you're representing clients that have been looking for a little while, they're not satisfied with what's out there in the resale market, maybe it's time to look into doing a custom build. If you work together to try and find a plot of land, they can get 100% of what they want. If they have the time and the means, and you have the wherewithal to see them through the process, then this can be a viable option in this marketplace to look into. Number two, don't be intimidated by the process. I know that hearing some of the things that Nicole said, if you've never done a new construction build before, can be intimidating. But we all have to start somewhere, right? We all gain knowledge by doing it in the real estate business. So if your people are considering new construction and a custom build, don't be afraid to go through the process with them. Ask as many questions as you possibly can and find somebody who's done this before, pick their brains about it, and see if they can help you write the agreement or potentially advise your clients. And the last point that I want to touch upon today is that we have to think outside of the box in order to get our clients what they want. So, for example, we may drive past a house every day that we just never think about as being an option for our clients to build a house on. Maybe that house is run down and dilapidated, but we don't think to contact the owner of that property because there's not a for sale sign in the ground. We have to think outside of the box in order to get our people what they want. So the next time that you're out driving around, maybe you want to look around and see what's out there, and maybe there are some hidden gems and opportunities for you to take advantage of for your clients. Well, that's it for the podcast this week. Thank you for joining us. We'll be back in another couple of weeks with a new topic, a new guest, and as always, if you want to hear about something that we haven't covered yet, don't be afraid to reach out to me, jason.ostrowski@foxroach.com. And if you haven't subscribed to the podcast or left us a review yet, please do so. It helps us to reach more people. Thanks again for joining us. This is Jason Ostrowski saying stay safe out there, stay selling, and we'll catch you on the next episode of the Everything Real Estate Podcast.